Hey folks, this is ioEther and we're back with another Ether Space! So, today we're going to start off with a game with Fax is in his M12, Ronix in his SU8, and I'm in my 12T! Yes, I have a 12T, and I have a 12T for Stronghold games, because our clan's been playing a lot of Tier 6 Stronghold games, and we need a scout. And I love playing my so it wasn't really a choice. Let's jump into first person, fixed camera, whatever, and jump straight into some questions. So yeah, questions. So I didn't actually get a whole lot of questions for this week, so I'm kind of have to make this up as I go a little bit. Now, one thing I do want to say before I start, if you ever run into this spot, it's really amazing for scouting enemy troops, but you're going to get lit almost immediately, and you can't get back up without a run. Anyways, now that that's done, so Zeus asked me about World of Warships, and if I'm in the alpha, if I can say anything about it, or if I'm excited about it and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I'm excited about it. Kind of. No, I'm not in the alpha. No, I can't say anything about it because I don't really know anything about it other than what everybody kind of knows about it. I like the idea of battling ships in a World Tanks-ish gameplay, but I'm not really thrilled about the idea of playing it in a World of Tank format. And what I mean by that is I'm a lot more thrilled with the idea of playing it in a War Thunder format than a World Tanks. Because the War Thunder format is a little bit less arcadey, a little bit more sim, but it's also, I don't know, it just feels better. The battles you get in War Thunder feel more fulfilling when you win. Because I guess that's because the odds are a little bit higher in World Tanks that you can carry. Whereas carrying War Thunder is a different story entirely. You either have to be exceptionally good, like exceptionally, or you have to work more as a team. Whereas in World Tanks, you can definitely go and as a platoon of like 3 and carry a game, because we're losing this, but we still have our platoon all together, and I am currently spotting for artillery. So as long as I do my job and I work with the 2 of them, we should be able to carry this. Or Panzer. Just like wrong place, wrong time. Didn't realize what was about to happen to him, and yeah, that's why I love my 12D. But anyways, so yeah, I guess I love both of them for different reasons. Now we're going to get into a War Thunder World Tanks thing. I know. So the reason I love War Thunder is you can go and do your own thing and be epic, but you kind of have to work as a team. There isn't this, I can go off and fly by myself, and nobody's ever gonna have to, come and deal with me because I can kill everything, kind of thing. That doesn't happen in War Thunder as much because if you don't work as part of the team, you will just lose by yourself. With World Tanks, there is a lot more of the independent thing. You can be exceptionally good, like a Unicum or Super Unicum, and just wipe the game by yourself. Or even a platoon of green players can carry a game. In War Thunder, even a platoon or a wing or whatever of good players, squadron, that's the word, of good players, have a harder time carrying the game unless they're actively working with the rest of the team. If they're seriously just trying to do their own thing, they're probably going to lose still. So I like War Thunder when I want to feel more as a team player and do those kinds of things with a team. Whereas World Tanks is just fun to have some fun by myself and with a couple of friends and own and, you know, whatever, right? So that's the reason I'm kind of bring this all back to where we started with World of Warships. I'm kind of up in the air about this so far, because if it turns out to be more of a World of Tankish thing, where everybody just like lines up in a bunch of battleships and shotguns each other until somebody carries the game, I'm gonna be less impressed versus if it's like a War Thunder type thing where you have to have destroyers doing scouting and everything else going better. If obviously perfect synchronicity is never going to happen in random top games, and I don't expect it to happen even among squadrons. But if you if it feels more like War Thunder with the giant battles and the epicness and the scale of War Thunder, I think that would be much more suited to the those ship battles, because of course when we're dealing with warships and battleships and even destroyers, the scale of those fights should be immense. If they're not just huge, then something's wrong. Wargaming tends to not do huge battles. Even like World of Warplanes never felt the same epicness as War Thunder did to me. Of course, if one of you thinks I'm wrong about that, please tell me why. It's just how I feel. Let's see. So yeah, I'm not part of the beta. Those are my complete thoughts on the subject. And I'm pretty much done now. All that to say that if it's more of an epic scale with lots of teamwork involved, I will completely eat it up, enjoy every second of it, love every second of it. If it feels more like World Tanks, where like a squadron of like 3 or a platoon of 3 can move the entire battle, and I'm going to be less happy with it. Not that I don't love World Tanks, but I love World Tanks for different reasons. Now, okay. Oh, and Zeus also says something about being able to get me a referral into the game, or something like that. If you can get me a referral, I would love that, Zeus. Obviously, the beta is I'm not going to get into the alpha. Might not get into the beta, and even if I do, I might not be able to talk about it, depending on what the NDA, if they made me sign an NDA, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'd like to be involved in it if I could before the general public. Not only because it would give me, you know, a bit of a ego trip, but it tends to lead to a greater understanding of the game once it does jump into the open public. I would enjoy that. Okay, so you might notice I'm trying to stretch this out a little bit, because that was my one and only question. Nobody else has asked me any questions since last game, or since last Ether space. So, now that I'm done talking about my one and only question, what was the other thing I did want to talk to you a little bit about? Ooh, nice shot. Okay, so I guess now the only thing that's left is to talk to you about my life, because I don't think I have any more gaming questions left to talk about. This is a little bit scary. Oops, dropped a pen. My bad. My life. Well, recently I've started trying to figure out how to cook onion rings. And since I don't actually have a deep fryer, it's become a little bit interesting. Now, if you've never had onion rings eaten outside of a restaurant, basically all you need to make them is salt, flour, water, and a little bit of baking powder. I almost said soda. That would be unfortunate. But then all you do is mix up the right ratios, drop in the onion rings, and then, you know, bake them up, fry them up. You want to fry them up. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I can tell you a few stories about this, which I'll continue in the next game. So I started off by, of course, I guess I should start by telling you how you make onion rings. If you've never made onion rings before, this is how you do it. Now, of course, to backstop that a little bit with the fact that I love cooking. I love to make things and create things, and I don't necessarily look at recipes the way I should. Or instructions. Instructions are a guideline, and you don't need them most of the time, sort of. Anyways, I don't use them, mostly because I don't care to. I figure I can figure it out for myself. I know enough about cooking, and I've cooked a variety of things over the years, so most of the time I know how to not burn down the house. I mean, never mind. Different story for a different time. But anyways, so of course with onion rings, the most basic onion rings you can possibly make. Take a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, some baking powder, and some salt. And now the recipe I don't remember looking at the recipe more than once. A very long. When I started all this was like a month ago. I believe the recipe calls for like a pinch of salt. That's funny. Anyway, so since I know I'm just going to end up salting the onion rings at the end of the recipe, I tend to put a little bit more salt in on the beginning, and this has nothing to do with the story. This has to do with my personal recipe for onion rings, which I'm sure I'll be changing as I start figuring out more about it. But for now, it's flour, water, decent amount of salt, and some baking powder. And the reason I'm putting a decent amount of salt in is because, of course, there's salty onion rings at the end anyway. They might as well taste salty to begin with. It does make some of the cooking stuff a little bit more difficult, but nah, whatever. So if you ever want to cook onion rings for yourself, you get the batter together. You've said the recipe so many times, I'm not going to say it again. You cut up the onion so that you end up with rings, obviously, for onion rings. And then you dismantle each of these sections into the individual rings. So slicing it, vertically, so you end up with these nice perfect rings. You want them fairly thick. The thicker they are, the better it tastes. You really do need both the onion rings and the batter in perfect harmony to make some really amazing tasting onions. Which is why I salt them a little bit more. I love that bit of tang of salt. Because the onions tend to be a little bit sweet if you're using cooking onions, which you should be. There might be a better onion for this, but I'm using cooking onions right now. So anyway, so after you of course you slice them, you batter them, and then you put them straight into the frying pan. The frying pan has to be really hot. I don't have a deep fat fryer. I only have a frying pan with oil in it. Now, of course, I tried different types of oil. I tried like a hot chili oil. That was a mistake. Why was in my mouth? I like hot food, but that was a mistake. Because normally to put out hot sauce type effects, burning in the mouth, you use bread or milk. Well, I don't have any milk currently because my stomach doesn't react well to it. And bread is, of course, the only bread around was laced with chili. You can see the problem with this. I was drinking one. Never mind. It was bad. Bad. And then so at some point I tried sesame seed oil. That was a worse mistake than the chili oil. Do not sesame onion rings. Horrible. Butter was tried. That was another mistake. But you know, trial and error. I will eventually figure this out, kind of thing, right? And so of course, my very first time making it, I had a vague idea as how to make them. I glanced at a recipe, so I knew the recipe totally by heart by then. No idea what I was doing. And I had never really fried anything in a pan with this much oil before. So I had forgotten about things like oil splashing while you're frying it. Now, of course, the other thing is, of course, you have to go really, really, really fast when you're doing these onion rings, because the rate at which they cook is about the same amount of time it takes you to batter the next batch. So when you're rotating them through, you're literally turning over some that are already done, taking some out of the pan at the same time as you're putting new ones in. I am a slight bit of OCD, so I like to fill the entire pan. So not only does that mean there are onion rings everywhere, it literally means there are onion rings like this, with the inside bit is another onion ring that is not cooked, or maybe it is cooked while the outer one isn't. And so I'm flipping onion rings inside them. It was bad, but I was enjoying myself. However, I couldn't spare any time to do anything other than concentrate on these onion rings. And so, while I'm 100% focused in on not letting any of them burn, not flipping them too early, getting everything battered and ready to get in, and, you know, like all this stuff, I kind of missed the fact that some of the oil had splashed out of the pan and had landed on the element. Now, it wasn't directly like splash in an element, it was actually that somehow some of the oil had made its way to the edge of the pan and run down to the bottom of the pan. It was now literally in contact with the element and the pan at the same time. And so it started smoking. I didn't notice. I didn't notice because I was frantically trying to get these onion rings cooked and then on a plate, and of course I totally prepared enough to bring a plate over there the first time, right? I didn't totally have to run to the cupboard and grab a plate out and run back to the stove and put the plate down on the stove near the element I was using, but not near enough that it would blow up, because that's another story. And so I missed the fact that it was smoking. And I got all these onion rings done, and I was really proud of myself. And I was about 3/4 of the way through, and getting into the point where I was falling behind, because of every time you batter an onion ring, the next one is harder because there's less batter, but you're still trying to coat the onion ring in the same way. So 3/4 of the way through, I'm frantically trying to batter enough onion rings to keep the pan the same level of fullness. Because of course, if the pan doesn't have enough onion rings in it, it's going to get too hot, which means it's going to start to smoke, which is going to be bad for everything involved, including the pan. And not to mention, I didn't want to inhale any more smoke. That's where I figured all the smoke was coming from, by the way, was the oil burning on the pan, not the oil burning under the pan. And so I get this phone call. Literally, as I'm spinning around trying to frantically get stuff battered and put into the pan and flipped and got, you know, out of the pan the ones that need to come out, and frantic, and my phone rings. 12 o'clock at night. I'm just like, nope, not answering that. Not even that I could answer it. No way I'm answering it, even if I could. Not happening. But I didn't. I'm gonna let it ring. Don't care. Finally get everything done. Just as I'm finishing up, to knock on my door, and I'm just like, really? I'm cooking here.
Enemy armor destroyed.
Landlord upstairs smelled smoke. A lot of smoke. It's like the pan was off the stove. I'd moved the plate off the stove. You know, everything was safe as far as the cooking. Like, nothing was going to explode or catch fire on me all of a sudden. I thought, anyways. The oil, of course, was still in the element because I hadn't realized it was there yet. And it was still smoking away, and somehow at this point in time, my fire alarm hadn't gone off. It makes me question if I should change the batteries in or not. But anyways, I didn't think there was that much smoke in the apartment. There really wasn't. And I didn't pay attention. So I you know, got everything set, opened the door, and the landlord is like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes. Why wouldn't that be?" Not a clue what was like. Well, I smell smoke. Oh, and it suddenly hit me, of course, what had happened. And so I, you know, reassured her everything's okay, and went back, and that was my first experience doing onion rings. They were crap. Absolute crap. But I love them anyway. I've gotten much better at cooking onion rings in a frying pan since then, but now I feel like I'm in a mood to tell stories, and since I know this game's gonna go on for a little bit, I feel like one more story, and then maybe I'll answer. I think I have any more questions, but one more story. I feel the need to tell at least one more. So I used to work on a farm. This doesn't really sound exciting. I understand the setup is not great. This farm had goats, and it was a rather unusual farm. Well, obviously goats, unusual. And they weren't goats for milk like most people think. No, it was meat goats, so some people ate the goats. I didn't eat the goats. I feel like I probably should have, just because I worked there. I feel like I should have at least tasted goat, but I never had the inclination to cook it up for myself. Anyways, so stories kind of about goats. So early on, I discovered that there was an electric fence around the goat pen. Not only was it electric, and yes, I had to personally test it to make sure it was on several times. I'm not going to tell you how it felt. It hurt, but nah. So not only was it electric, it was mobile. You could literally pick this fence up and move it. Now, of course, obviously you want it turned off before you moved it, because that presented whole other sheets of problems, but you could move this fence anywhere you wanted to, because of course the goats roamed the farm and moved from paddock to paddock, so that they could always have fresh food. They ate whatever was left of the veggies. So after a crop was picked, the goats came in and cleaned everything else up. Great food for the goats. Great way to fertilize your fields without ever having to pay for fertilizer. Small problem with the fences. Because of course they got picked up and moved so often, they tended to come out of the ground a little bit easier than you necessarily wanted them to. And of course, they're fences. Now they're not. Now when you're thinking of a standard fence post, you're thinking of something like as big as your head, that's like 6 feet tall, maybe 5 feet tall, and like, 3 or 4 feet of that is underground kind of thing. They're big. They're kind of hard to miss. No, we're talking about fence posts that were about as big as my finger, and they had nylon wiring. And by nylon wiring, I literally mean it was a strand of nylon, or a rope of nylon. about a quarter of the width of my finger, with a wire woven into the thread, so that no matter how you touched it, you were going to touch bare wire and get shocked, because you of course complete the ground to the ground. And so, because of the fact that these things were mobile, you can move them wherever you want to, but of course they came out of the ground really easily, and didn't matter what you did, you were going to get shocked if you touched the fence, unless you grabbed the pole and only the pole, and even then it was kind of iffy. So there was this private party at the farm, because the farm had a connecting corn maze to it, which drew a lot of people, and at some point a bunch of high school kids decided this would be a great place for a party. So they rented the place out, completely legit. There may have been some beverages that they probably shouldn't have had there. I was working, I didn't care, it wasn't my business. So they started having races on wet grass in the dark about midnight-ish, maybe 11 p.m. You can't, it was pitch black, clouds out, no visibility, and these kids are bolting back and forth on wet grass. You know what's coming. I nearly died laughing. Some poor kid, trying to impress the girls who were there, ran farther than his competition, realized what was about to happen, tried to stop, and literally did the skid on wet grass 6 feet past the end of the line, the finish line, into the electric fence. Now, I told you it's mobile, right? It fell off. He went through the fence. Now, he didn't break the fence, he just ripped the fence out. And he ripped a bunch of stakes, a bunch of posts out, and then he rolled. And it was on. He was now tangled up in a mesh of electric fencing, which was shocking him about every second. I was dying of laughter while trying to get to the box to turn it off. It would never kill him. Just extreme amounts of pain. Needless to say, they stopped the races after that. It took about probably about a couple minutes for me to get to the box to turn this thing off, and another 5 to 10 minutes to get this guy out of the electric fencing because he had tangled himself up so much. But it was just hilarious on the basis that yes, I'm a sadist sometimes, but it was awesome. They stopped the races, but it was still awesome. Yeah, he was okay. Nothing bad happened to him. Yes, I have more farm stories, but not for this episode. For this episode, I think I'm going to wrap it up, because I have told my quota of amazingly horrible stories. Next time, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that is how you win a game. Right? Come on. Aiken, were you playing with him or something? I forget. Anyways.
Let's move.
So, that is the end of this week's Ether Space. And I'm glad I got to tell some of these stories. Some of these stories are not stories I ever get to tell anymore, or have told anyone, depending on the story. And I look forward to thinking up some more stories from my past to tell you next time. I've totally never hurt myself so very many times. Ooh, laundry baskets and stairs next time. I shouldn't tell this story. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button and tell more people about it. All my links to Facebook, Twitter, Duckster, all that kind of stuff is in the description below, along with the Patreon account, which you can donate directly to me to help support the channel. And if you don't want to help support the channel by donating directly to me, watch more ads, please. Really, really help me out. Thank you very much for all you do. Goodbye, Ethernauts, and have a great week. ioEther out. Hey folks, this is ioEther, and we're back with some more World Tanks. Side scraping. How to counter a player who's side scraping. So the E100 is trying to side scrape. And you can see, let's see where. Ronick is actually firing at the engine deck of the enemy tank. And well, that makes sense because Ronick's gun is actually higher up than the enemy tank's engine deck, so he can aim down. And if he concentrates right, and if he, T-57. Really? How did you miss that shot on the T-57? Really? That was like a free shot. So the enemy 8-on-hunter is getting really pissed that Ronick can somehow penetrate him without being, without exposing enough of his tank so that so this guy can kill Ronick. So Ronick's, again, gonna shoot for the engine deck.